Hello everyone, welcome to Book 2, Night 20, Take 2 of the Orphan Tales Live Quarantine Reading Series. We are having some technical difficulties at the moment. Hopefully restarting the stream will have fixed them. I made some sad noises about things that have been happening. They are the same sad noises. We all make the same sad noises. I feel like half the world is just crying in the corner of their house all year this year. It just sucks. Both personally, politically, all of it. Yay, issues fixed. So, I don't know. I wish none of it were happening. I wish none of it were going to happen the way it is probably inevitably going to happen. Well, as I was saying before my technology decided to not be technology, S.J. Tucker and I are having an online concert on October 1st. You are more than welcome and begged and pleaded to attend. It is going to be through onlineconcertthing.com. Watch my Twitter for more details, or hers, which is Suj, with two zeros rather than O's. My lipstick is the other big announcement, which I just got done talking about. This is the last run of this lipstick. It is my favorite. I have wanted to share it with you, but I knew that the next time I wore it would be the last time because I haven't been able to find any online. It is LA Splash Smitten Matte lipstick in Love Struck. It's awesome. I get compliments on it every time I go out of the house. It's like a dark mauve. It's great. And it stays on all day and is fantastic. And my favorite thing in the world. I'll never have it again. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I have a child. It's just lipstick. But it is sad. So here it is. Enjoy it while it's happening. Other than that, I think we'll just go straight to the intro. We skipped Wednesday to honor or take part in the Facebook, Instagram misinformation protest, because there's nothing they love more than misinformation, and hopefully that'll have fixed it. Everything's fine now. That's how it works, right? You just do one day of activism and then it's fine. That's what I've always been told. Anyway, as always, for legal reasons, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a one-woman show. You can find music based on this book at sjtucker.com and come and listen to it as we get the band back together on October 1st. You can find copies of it at your local independent booksellers. Please patronize them as much as you can. And if you would like to support mine, it is printbookstore.com in Portland, Maine. I'm on Twitter at Catherynne Valente. I assume that most of you got here from Twitter, but I am on Twitter screaming into the void as Cat Valente. I am on Patreon as Cat Valente. You can support me there. All kinds of goodies will be coming out there over the next 10 days toward the end of the month, including the first chapter of the space opera sequel. I always forget how I've done this. This is like the 65th reading. How can I still forget this stupid intro crawl? You can catch up in the archive at Cat Valente Live on YouTube. And you can ask me questions after the reading, but it's best to think of what they might be before I finish reading so that there's no awkward dead air. We're going to be finishing up the goldfish story tonight, which, as I said before, is one of my favorite bits of the whole series, and the only thing of mine that has made it all the way to film thus far. So let's get into it, since we're already running a little late. Sebastian's having a day. I don't know what his deal is, but I think he might even still be awake as we speak, which is not cool. He's not sick or anything. He's just having a time. Who among us has not wanted to just yell and scream and turn things on and off all day to soothe ourselves? That's relatable. #relatable. Okay. Here we go. The river pilot's tale continued. Amilcar became very wealthy and kept his wife in cold rooms so that her throat was always a rattle. Eventually, he built a great house on the river and kept her in the lower rooms near the water, where there is always a chill to rattle the chest. Thus Vasya became the first mint of Ajalab, and Amilcar its first duke. Even now our coins are tinged with blue and bear those two distinctive holes in their center. I looked horrified at my captor. He beamed, having told what he considered to be an excellent story. "I am a dragon, not a bank," I said softly. "I keep telling you, lovely girl, you are neither." He took me through the gate of the house, with as many rooms as a river has branches lying on its floor, and he sat me near a great fire grate with a dragon's head nodding over it, stuffed like an elk's. "Now," he said, taking my hand in his and kneeling on a spotless marble floor, "that is a dragon. It is very old and very dead. You are very young and very alive, and a maiden with hair the likes of which I have never seen. I think you are marvelous, and radiant as coins in the sun. And if you are not entirely mad, I would be happy to keep you in this house and dress you in something other than stained breeches and a shirt far too big for you, and feed you soup, and make you my wife." The other members of the household seemed to think this was rather sudden, and all the city was dutifully scandalized. But I am a fish. I lay my eggs twice a year by the dozens, and it is none of my care if they survive. If food is scarce, I will even nibble on a few. This is the nature of goldfish, the nature of rivers. Mating is easy. It hardly takes as long as lunch. I've had so many children, I've forgotten them all. So they their own children, they their grandchildren. The goldfish has a golden heart, and with all that gold, there is no room for sentiment. And so I married him. It seemed rather a lot of fuss just to spawn. I wore a dress like 1,000 spider webs trailing over my maiden's body. Perhaps I thought a fish becoming a maiden is nearly as extraordinary as her becoming a dragon. Incense swung in censers, and bearded men anointed foreheads. But then maidens did seem to take more fuss over things than fish, and there was a wedding bed with an embroidered coverlet where there ought to have been a nice clump of twigs and a bit of shade. And instead of glistening little eggs I never had to think on again, stuck to the side of the lock, there was a big belly, and it went on for months until I thought I would spawn forever. But as my belly grew, my skin began to peel. I'd become used to the pink and the soft, and I was alarmed. I went to the doctor, who was ensconced in his rooms in the great estate, and lay on his table. He plied me with leeches and poultices for a long while, but still my skin peeled. At last, some piece of my foot sloughed off its last shred of maiden skin, and beneath it, gleaming and glistening on the spotless marble floor, were 3 long black claws and green scales like emerald shavings. The tale of the cloak of feathers continued. I understood in a moment. The goldfish laughed, a stream of bubbles breaking the surface of her goblet. After all, an infant goldfish looks more or less like a golden eyelash floating on the water, nothing like the full-grown fish. I leapt over the falls, and I began an infant's life. Once I had spawned, I was mature. Therefore I entered my adult phase, scales, wings, fire, and all. Did you never wonder why the old books are so full of dragons chasing after maidens? The serpents think the girls are orphans, and long to get them away in a lair so they may grow up strong and tall. What happened to your child? I said gently. Locke shrugged, rising and falling slightly in the water. I'm afraid that during its birth I completed my molting and rose immediately from childbed and out of the great country house, my long green tail corkscrewed behind me. I bellowed fire at the moon in sheer joy, and then bellowed fire at the house at its lowest rooms, and as I flew faster than a river barge, I glimpsed behind me something great and blue disappearing into the river. I flew as fast as my fish-pole wings could carry me, up into the mountains and back to my river and my lock. I thought nothing of the child. I do not even know if it was a boy or a girl. I thought nothing of its father either. Mates do not last more than one season, that's obscene. And eggs will survive or fail in their own way. The best a mother can do is keep the males from eating them for a time and then leave them to the river. I came here to the other goldfish to show them how it was done, that it could be done. I soared over the foaming, frothing edge of the falls, my tail snapping like a green flag, my nostrils flared to taste the wind. Ah, it tasted like brine shrimp and broken stones. My spine ridge ruffled white and blue as the poor lamia. I called out to them, the lockfish, the goldfish, the trout, the pike, the thorny-boned catfish, the clacking drumfish, the eels who would never lie, the bass. And as I cleared the waterfall, I felt my scales squeeze in and my claws seize up, and I snapped back into a goldfish, just as quick as the flick of a fin. I fell into the pool with a loud splash. I could not help it. I laughed, cawing against the bars of my cage. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be cruel. It must have been very sad for you. The fish gave her piscine shrug again. They laughed too, but they saw me, some of them. Pike and eel and trout and lockfish, they saw that I was a dragon. Couldn't you leap back over? I suppose, but it was not long after that the bargemen came scooping fish up in their goblets, explaining to them what they would pay and how large the glass would be, and it seemed to me very satisfactory work. Tasting the river. I travel as far as any dragon on these routes, and I don't think I should like to go through the infant stage again. It's not nearly so marvelous as the last part, and I do not really like the color pink. Locke and I had many fine conversations on the river barge, but all rivers end. This one was very long, and its passage took a great many months, and it was not even half the journey to Agenat. When the water had finally narrowed so far as to be impassable, I had nearly forgotten I was in a cage, so kind and piccolo cheerful was her voice, so bright were her scales in the crystal goblet. I thought often of my goose, her flapping orange feet, her hooting cry. When I wept, Locke was kind enough to look away, but she bade me farewell with a slosh of her water, and only looked sad for a moment when Kostya loaded me onto a cart. And though I bounced and flashed my tail, scorching the bars, the log, and Kostya's hems, there was little I could do to keep myself clear of the Red City. I had only to wait. The Vareni was quite as splendid as Locke had promised, and the bridges rattled under our cart, tossing red dust into the current. But I hardly saw the colors in the glare of Kostya's yellow coat, in the grey mire of my own misery. And when he steered his cart through the dressmaker's parish, I was certain I knew where he had gotten that coat. Every window and hovel door was slung with clothes, the dyes glossy and intense, even the simplest apron glowing goldfish bright. Troughs of dye lined the streets like gutters in scarlet and yellow and blue, and a few merry folk, far too few for the number of troughs, dipped their skirts, their trousers, their hats, their fine, long coats. Spools of costly thread stood like lampposts here and there, with a child selling lengths with her own pair of shining scissors. There were few enough people, but clothes there were in plenty. Far off there sounded laughter and screaming and jostling and spilling, the crunching of bones and the tearing of silk, the singing of songs and the dancing of feet. Agenat was only lately dead, and the wake still raged on. Kostya did not look at me, but stood straight and tall and proud with his prize, as a child or two stopped and stared up at me in mud-cheeked wonder. His gait was awkward. He limped, as fashionable noblemen often do, and until we came to the bell tower on the east bank of the Vareni, far from the crowd and the dresses hung up in the curtains, I thought nothing of it. The bell was whole then, but much of the rest was as you see it, as many things are on the banks of the Vareni, following their natural inclination downward, sliding slowly into the river. Everything was boarded, broken, dusty, dim. The bell never rang, and the floors creaked, and my cage was set just where you see it, and never moved again. Kostya opened his arms expansively, as if presenting me with a very great gift, all wrapped in a bow. "This is where we shall work, my good friend. It is a lovely place, with a great many corners for hiding things in." What work is it you wish me to do? Nothing, nothing. Sit very still while I do what I must. I should have no use for a slave of such very great size. And Kostya, with his gold mask gleaming beneath its peacock fringe, bent low and plucked a single long feather from my tail. I screamed, the sudden short pain of it. Only Ravija, my pumpkin dear, my gardener girl who caught me stealing and plucked her punishment, had ever dared such a thing before. I bled and stared at him, hurt and uncomprehending. He already had me in his grasp. What could another feather avail him? It smoked and hissed against his glove. He quickly threw it up onto the belly of the bell, and it remained there. So bright, he cried, bright as the stars in the heavens. And so it went every morning, like a clock chiming dawn. He came and plucked a feather from me, dripping scarlet blood in a circle under the bell, from whence they never returned. His glee increased with every feather, and with every feather I was weaker, wept more bitterly, until I could hardly stand my cage, and had to be given cushions on which to lie as my tail depleted morning by morning. The space below my cage was stained with blood and golden tears, as though someone had left a ghastly cut there on the boards. What Kostya did with his nights I could never say. He went into the city, I presume, to drink and sing and whore as men in wigs will do. But my own nights were dark and damp, full of river sounds, sloshing currents lapping at the stairs. There were clicking sounds in the bell, but they were no company. My tail was half plucked, my heart half dead. I longed for the glimpse of a silver feather through the tapered windows, a long neck speckled with moon, but she did not come. It was always foolish to think she would come. In my thick and knotted despair, there came a scratching noise, a clattering and a scraping. Out of the bell floated a few of my feathers. I sang happily at them, so overjoyed was I to see them again. Their flames had gone out, of course, long gone from the heat of my body, but the gold sparkled still. After them came a long length of pale thread, and along this came a quiet brown spider, the size of a child's fist, whose legs were 8 delicate glittering needles, their eyes jutting out sharply at the joints where they met her thin, true legs, and in each eye trailed threads of scarlet and gold. Good evening, O fabric of mine, O spinner of my best silks, said the spider in a voice like pages rubbing together. Her manifold eyes regarded me seriously. You must be mistaken. I'm quite sure that you are the spinner of silks between us. On the contrary, she said, swaying a little on her silky lead, Kostya has asked me to make him a cloak of feathers, the brightest the world has seen, and you are my cloth, my model, my thread, and my pattern all together. I looked at her in horror. Why would you agree to such a thing? She shrugged. Kostya has always paid me well. And well he might. We have known each other since I was barely out of my egg sac, and he was adorned in whiskers and fur. I am Sleeve, the bell spider, famed the parish over for my gowns and my jackets. Who would not come to me with such a commission? Who else would do the materials justice? I am not materials, I said quietly, my eyes cast to the ring of tears and blood. This is Ajana, she answered, her voice stitched thick with apology. Everyone is materials. And at this she waved 4 of her needle legs. Did Kostya do that to you? Did he make a little bracelet of your legs? How funny you are. No, of course he didn't. I'm a recluse spider. It is an apt name. It indicates the poisons of my body besides. No one could sever my legs, did I not ask them to. The dressmaker's tale. Another creature's tale is like a web. It spirals in and out again, and if you are not careful, you may become stuck while the teller weaves on. Did I become stuck in Kostya's tail, or did he become stuck in mine? It is confusing, so I will begin with mine. Perhaps somewhere along the strand we will snare him. The first thing I remember was glass. I was caught under glass with a few dozen others as brown and small as I, perhaps siblings, perhaps not. One cannot really smell the egg sac after a few days, and though we might have been brothers and sisters, we easily might have not. Who is to say? But what I saw from that squirming, thronging glass was a long table with a tall cup standing upon it, holding up a stack of books, a cup of horn, all twisted red and black and yellowed white. Each day he would scoop up some of us and crush us in his mortar, mixing in rose and snake scale and whatever else he could think of. He would pour this mixture into the cup and drink it down, savoring and considering each concoction. Now, even as an infant, I was a clever thing, as all spiders must be, to find their web rafters and their suppers so soon after their mother crawls back into the dark. We are born with the knowledge of poison beating hard in us. We taste it, of course we taste it. Do you not know the taste of your own mouth, your own spit, your own blood? So do we, and know it well. He could have been at no other trick than poisoning, with so many of us crushed in his bowl, twitching legs, brushing weakly at the rim. I have no grudge against poisoners, being one myself, but nor did I greatly desire to become a tool of his trade. And so when he came for me, with his dry, thin fingers groping under glass, I was ready. I scurried up his reaching arm all the way to his neck and sank my fangs in him as quick as a snapping web strand, before he could even cry. When I'm very angry, I sometimes even have a second bite to give. And this, too, I gladly gave to him, with a high whispering shriek of triumph and 2 red points of blood on his cheek. I am quick. I am merciful. He thrashed like a drowning man, and out of his skin came snaking vines. I have since been very careful in the case of men, in case all men have these whipping things hiding beneath their skin. Out snarled holly and thorn apple and ivy, reaching to find and strangle and save. But I am too small for such blunt limbs, and they never touched me. One lashed out a blackthorn branch and shattered the cup of horn which had held so many spider broths, and a terrible, sorrowful sound filled the room, like the last gasping note of a song that had once dreamed of forests and storms and lightning brighter than love. I shuddered as it died away in the room's stale air. But I cannot really mourn a cup. Away from his purpling corpse, I and some few others ran into the world and the light. Having been captive since as near to birth as makes the difference of one strand of thread to another, I was not properly socialized, and unsure as to what a spider ought to do with her time. I asked the crickets in the glass-blowing district, and they said, "We suspect it is proper and right that a spider should rub her legs together and make a very nice sort of music, which fills up the night and draws mates from all corners, green and black and handsome." Well, I tried to rub my legs together, but no music of any kind came from them, only a dry sort of scraping. So I asked the moths in the bird-keeper's ward, and they said, "We suspect it is right and proper for a spider to seek out the flame wherever it lies and bask in its light." I went then to the candlemaker's quarter, and there found more flame than tallow, but I found it very hot and uncomfortable, and when a foreleg began to smoke, I, in my wisdom, retreated. I asked the flies in the calligrapher's close, and they considered for a very long while, keeping far back from me. I did not know why. "We suspect it is proper and right for a spider to eat flies," they stuttered, "but we do not advise it. Perhaps it is more proper and more right for a spider to weave beautiful alphabets, as a calligrapher does, beautiful dresses, as a tailor does. We do not know, but we seem to recall that weaving is the essential thing now. Please leave us alone." I shrugged and set about locating a calligrapher who would take me as an apprentice. I suspected the flies, like the moths and the crickets, were silly, flighty things, who knew no more of spiderhood than I did. But without a map, all roads seem equal. I asked the squid in their tanks, all aflush with ink. We have no use for a spider, they gurgled. You are extremely drownable, and it would be impolite of us to ask you to work in our element. Try the humans. I asked the man with the high shop and a hat of blue and buckles, who penned careful manuscripts all through the night. I have no use for a spider, he coughed. You are extremely crushable, and it would be impolite of me to ask you to work beside my careless hands. Try the sirens. I crawled beneath the door of a room at the highest floor of the highest tower in Agenab, outside the Duke's estate. Drafty, cold place. Cold! In Agenab! But there it was, a tower so high the air itself shook with the terror of the heights. Within the rooms, the windows creaked and trembled with their own dread of the sheer walls, and 3 women blinked at me in wonder and hunger. They had women's legs, so I will call them women. But from the waist, brown feathers overtook the skin, and the upper parts of them were sparrows, great tottering beaks and long page-brown wings, tipped in black, folded neat as elbows at their sides. Their huge, wet, black eyes regarded me with an early bird's right to breakfast, and I tucked my legs in quickly. Please, do not eat me. I have come to learn the art of letters. I can weave and spin as well as any, and I will stitch whatever words you ask me. The birds looked at each other and said nothing. We have a lovely illustration of our birds here. Instead, they extended their wings and began to turn, a strange hopping sinuous dance that looped each one out of the embrace of the other, ducking under one wing and hopping with bare, grimy feet over the pirouetting leg of the other. Their backs arched and bent, their wings dipped down and low and fluttered wide, tracing circle after circle. I watched them in awe, their sure steps, their constant touch. Never was there a moment when one siren did not have her wing or her toe on another of her sisters. When they stopped, they looked expectantly at me, as if they had spoken, and I was not sure how to answer, if I was not being a very rude creature. And then I looked at the floor. It was covered in paper from wall to wall. Fine, creamy paper, soft as silk rugs, and upon it, with feet and wings which I could see now were dark not with mud but with ink, they had written, "But we find spiders delicious." I find many things delicious, but if I were to eat all of them, I would be as big as a baker's pan. The trio danced again, their beaks turned up to the ceiling and down, their wings whipping, snapping, flicking at the paper floor. This is wise. But do you really think you could dance with us? Your penmanship would be so tiny, so intricate. Only the very dedicated would wish to read it. I have been told it is right and proper for a spider to weave, either alphabets or dresses. The flies were unclear, and dresses are so very big. We have never heard of a spider calligrapher. I've never heard of sirens who do not speak. The women blinked again, one after the other, 6 eyes sliding closed and open again. And they began to dance in truth, a swift, urgent dance that bent them close to the floor, their wings tapping and flipping at the paper, letters forming like shapes in water, long and lithe and exalted, their toes gently tipping an I here and a J there, their leaps elongated and graceful, sometimes spanning the room entire, but they never broke with each other, staying as close and tight as a flock of migrating birds, racing over the page, their movements alien and aching and radiant. And this is what they wrote. The tale on the floor. We sang too long, we sang too well. We are sisters in silence now. It is our vow and our penance. Once we had a nest on the open wind, on the open sea, and how grey was the sea of our youth. How soft and thick was the nest we built. How long ago it was, how long ago it seems to us now. How much we have seen since we walked on our spit of stone and called each other sisters. But we are old now. We are old. and there is no sand any more between our toes. How long since we sang innocent ballads on the shore, sharp and well turned? How long since we opened our throats in the rain and called it harmless? Our nest was then threshed of straw and juniper and loose waving cotton flowers, driftwood and scallop shells and sandpiper bones. Long dune grasses crisscrossed themselves within, and there we slept in each other's arms, heads tucked under our wings, and were warm and were not wicked, no matter what they say. And in our joy, as we plucked our way among the tide pools, sucking the orange flesh from mussels and closing up the anemones with our wingtips, as our legs grew blue and goose-pimpled with the ocean spray, we sang. We sang dizzy waltzes about the moon, who breathes so deeply she draws the whole sea into her and blows it out again. We sang dirges for our mother, buried at sea when we were chicks with pink toes. We sang dirges for our father, who we never knew. We sang tarantellas and danced them on the coral boulders until our feet bled. We were happy together in those days, knew nothing of the world, innocent as mice, slurping fish from their bones and looking at the sky through our joined feathers. Do you know what it means to sing? Are there songs of spiders, gossamer and glistened? It means to open up your mouth and unstop your chest and push your heart, your blood, your marrow, and your breath out of you like your own children. Opened up our mouths and unstopped our chests and pushed our hearts and our blood and our marrow and our breath out of us, and the songs were all our nieces and daughters lying among us and giggling on the wind. Then she washed up on our spit of stone. How beautiful we thought her. How blue her lips were. How strange her skin. How odd her hair, seaweed strangled. How we watched her, how we prodded like a dolphin beached our drowned girl. She had a sailor's clothes, her shirt torn open, and we did not know humans were made so. There was a large compass needle waving northward in her navel, pointing up toward her chin. There was rust at the tip like blood. Her boots were full of water. There were barnacles on the heels. We pinched her and nudged her and rolled her over. We sang to her. How we sang to her. What did we not sing to our drowned dear? Warm skipping minuets, thrilling ballads of narwhal hunts and octopus cities under the waves, crooning lullabies of children well held and tears never shed, all those we had from our mother so long dead. Wake up, girl, we sang, but blue she stayed. The tide is coming in. Now's no time for sleeping. But cold she stayed. Wake up, sailor love. Gadir has you, Ashni has you, Nid will not let you drink the whole sea down. We sang, and she coughed, she groaned, she made sounds a sailor does when it does not want to wake up. Her eyes opened. They were miraculously blue. We had never seen anything with blue eyes, though Mother's song said such things might exist very, very far away. Her hair was black and plastered to her back, wet as a fish's fin. Her face was ashen, tired, drawn as a crone's. Why do you sing me back, you awful old cat bait? When first you sang me down, she croaked. What do you mean? Gadir chirped. It was your song I followed, your song that filled up my mouth with salt and sea. And we will pick up there next week. Not next week. Yes, I guess it's Sunday, so next week. Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Same fairy tale time, same fairy tale channel. Does anyone have any questions? I think we saw the end of Bryony the Poisoner there. Most everyone gets their just desserts sooner or later in the Orphan's verse, or however it's to be termed. From the hearts, I guess you guys like Orphan's verse. What do I like best to sing? Oh, I love a good musical. my current karaoke favorite is Poor Unfortunate Souls from The Little Mermaid, which is technically a musical. But, you know, I have a low voice. The Broadway folks, they do not write for ladies like me. So I tend to sing the boy parts in my favorite musicals. And Sea Hag is right there in my range. Have I ever done calligraphy? I have. I've actually done a bunch of different calligraphy. I can't really draw very well, but I can make very pretty letters. So I've done Japanese calligraphy, I've done Western calligraphy, I've done medieval calligraphy. I've done a lot of calligraphy. And anybody who has seen my handwriting or had something signed by me knows that I have, because my handwriting is absurd and ridiculous. And honestly, my life would be so much easier if I could just convince myself that I don't have to make it look that good. Nobody cares what my autograph looks like, and yet I can't do it. I have like 11 million letters in my name, and I make them all pretty when I sign things. And then my handwriting is doubly messed up from all the various calligraphy traditions that I've taken classes in. And then on top of that, my degree is in ancient Greek. So like my N's have the tail, and so do my H's. It's the letter that looks like N in Greek is not the letter N, so we call it a false friend. It's actually the long E, but instead of just being the one hump N, it goes over and then has a tail down. So do my regular N's in English, and my H's and my M's, and yeah, my handwriting is super funky. I like it though. My stepmother has the world's most perfect handwriting. It looks like a font. It's so good. So I know that my handwriting could never achieve those heights, because I am simply not as precise a thinker as she is. But or as precise a hand. I don't have the hand-eye coordination for it, or patience. But my handwriting is definitely unique. You'd know it was mine. Tenors always get the best melodic lines, so if you're singing those, you must be having a blast. Yeah, no, I love singing my boy parts. I'm fine with it. I can do a high tenor. It's fine. Do I have any advice? Oh, we got lots of questions today. Do I have any advice for writers working on their first book? Finish something so that you can feel how amazing that feels and get addicted to it. Like, that is the only way to get through a career, to get addicted to the feeling of finishing something. So even if it's just a short story, like, you gotta have that feeling of putting that last word on, and knowing how good that is can really get you there. As if you're in the progress of working on your first book, you know, the general advice that I give is definitely to read, like to keep reading everything you possibly can. That is sort of the unspoken other half of a writer's practice. And, you know, don't think too much about whether it's going to be published. Look at this ridiculous thing I'm reading to you guys. This stupid, absurd, way too many birds. Like, way too many birds and pregnant people. The collection of fairy tale. Like, this is not anybody's, like, big pick as to what would be a book that people would be interested in hearing read out loud over 6 months, 15 years after it came out. Don't think about any of that stuff. You can never predict what's going to be a hit, so you might as well write what you like. So just my best books, my most popular books, of which this is not even one, but when I am at my best is when I'm just fucking around, when I'm just playing. My playing is gold. It's just getting to the playing part. It's so hard to play when we're older and crappier and the world is terrible, and you know, you have to find time with your job and your kids and everything else. It's hard to get to that play space, but that space is where the best gooey nougat comes from. Like, that's the space you need to get to. You need to get to that heart of play. And the books where I know I was there, I was in the playroom, are always the ones that have come out to be ones that last. So find your playroom. That's my advice. And that's brand new advice. I've never given that advice before. So right here for you. Sorry, I had scrolled up for that question, so now I have to scroll down again. Mandy says, I think people who focus on making their signatures pretty for autographed work shows they're good and decent people. Well, thank you. You know, my aching hand acknowledges your acknowledgement. I feel someone else said my mom's handwriting is perfect. I feel like the previous generation just they learned it in school in a way that we didn't. Although honestly, my stepmother's handwriting is beyond anything any of us learned in school. Oh, Mandy says she likes how I autograph the Fairyland books. That it's clever. So with every book I write, I always have something that I sign if that's sort of a standard note to people. Some of them I will have more than one. If somebody's name starts with A through L in Fairyland, I'll say to so and so who begins with such and such. But if their name doesn't, then I have another backup. And I am always curious because I usually will come up with it in the moment of the first signing what it will be for any given book. And of course, if we've had a social moment and there's something else that's more personal I can put in, I will. But it's not, that doesn't always happen. And sometimes I'm in a hurry and I still want to write something. I want to write a note. I want to not just puke my name onto something and walk away. So I try. So there's several books have a couple of different ones, but I try to come up with something nice to say to you guys. Hi Kinglet. So yeah, it seems to be everyone's questions. Any last questions? Did I miss anything? There was quite a chat flurry, a churry, flurry going there for a second. Okay, well, I'll do my outro. If you have any more questions, you can pop them up in the chat. As always, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can get copies of them at your local independent booksellers. If you want to support mine, it's printbookstore.com. You can find me on Twitter at Cat Valente and on Patreon at Cat Valente. And be a patron there and help to support me. And more readings like this. You can catch up in the archive at YouTube. Cat Valente Live on YouTube is the name of the channel. And I did forget something in the very beginning. If you are moved and wish to toss a coin to your witch, it is a lot to put these together, and it is still a very, very lean time for all of us freelancers and will be for a while. So anything that you can contribute is deeply, deeply appreciated. There is a tip jar on my Instagram profile, on my YouTube profile, and on my website, which is CatherynneValente.com. Thank you so much to Alyssa for tipping me last week. I can't even begin to express to you what that means. I know how much it means when we're all struggling right now, and it immediately went to feeding my child. This is literally just getting food from hand to mouth. And so thank you so much, Alyssa, for your help. And anyone else who helps us out, I will thank you on the next stream. Oh, Wednesdays and Sundays are your favorite days. That's such a lovely thing to hear. I hope that this has been something for you guys. I hope that this has been a little light in the dark. It's gotten so very dark as the year has gone on, and I hope that this has been a little golden feather, a little golden feather. That's all any of us can hope to shed. I love you all. I will see you on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Have a lovely evening.